Hello and welcome to the Outdoor Gibbon Podcast, episode 42, Artemis Deer Stalking. I managed to grab an interview with the two of the founding ladies of Artemis, which is Heather and Kate, and we managed to record this just before the Scottish Game Fair. They were on their tour of Scotland, and I thought it would be rude not to invite them over, have a chat, and then actually go out and we did some deer stalking. So it was it was a good afternoon, and we never got a buck at the end. We saw a few things, but we won't hang about. We'll just get straight on with this podcast. Hello and welcome to the Outdoor Gibbon Podcast. Today I am joined by Heather and Kate of Artemis Deer Stalking. How you doing?
Good, thank you.
Yeah.
Excellent.
Great to be here.
Well, this is the first sort of in-person podcast I've really done, and you guys have come a long way, obviously, from down the country to come up to Scotland.
Yeah, I mean, fortunately, it's all tied in really well. I was coming up for a bit of a visit anyway, and we've got an event in Kelso on Saturday, so it just worked out perfectly, didn't it?
Yeah, and I've managed to hop my way around Scotland visiting various people for a week, so...
Oh, fantastic. As I say, Scotland's one of those places that you can literally say, I'm up here, and there's people all over the place that you can pop in and visit and say hello to.
Yeah,
Definitely.
I love it. It's fantastic for that.
So what's your event you've got happening? Is it something at Kelso, wasn't it?
Yeah, so we've got ambassadors in various parts of the country, because obviously myself and Kate aren't local. So we've got Dawn, who's based in Kelso, and her husband David have put together, we've called it a sharpshooters event.
Okay.
So it's like a mixed event. There'll be shooting, but Louise Farmer is also going to do a best practice talk. So it'll be varied and hopefully educational in both sort of marksmanship and the sort of educational side of deer stalking as well.
Oh, fantastic. And have you got plenty of sort of, what would I call it, not customers, but members from Scotland? Or is it still predominantly from down in England?
I think predominantly they're from England.
I think so, yeah. I think there
we've
is
got
quite a
Ailey-
few ladies up here, but...
Aileen McFarlane is our other Scottish ambassador, East. She's coming across, but I think the rest, to my knowledge, are from further south.
Oh, okay. So you've got a hole in the market, really, to actually try and get the ladies from Scotland to join up to Artemis Deer Stalking.
There are a few on our group, but they are, I think, the logistics of getting around Scotland is quite difficult, the road system, and so they are spaced across Scotland.
Oh, okay.
And I don't actually know, I don't know if you do, Heather, how many we have up here.
I don't actually. We're not very good at sort of stats and figures. But I know that we do have quite a few. A lot of women up here, though. Our group predominantly, I suppose, is aimed towards getting women into stalking. And women that stalk up here have probably been doing it since they were wee bairns. So, you know, they're not too worried about going to beginners events.
No, it is one of those things, I suppose. It's a completely different market up here. When you've got keepers' daughters and people that have just been brought up around shooting, it just happens, doesn't it? So let's for the listeners, let's get a bit of feedback. We'll start with Kate. My usual question on any podcast is, how did you get involved in shooting sports?
Well, I'm very late in life coming to shooting sports. All I ever did for a lot of years was shoot vermin out of my bedroom window with an air rifle.
Okay.
And I decided I liked shooting my air rifle. So I then booked a day with a local shoot ground that had a rifle range, and I went and had a go for the first time ever with rimfire and centerfire rifles.
Okay.
Loved it. That was in early 2018, and then I asked locally everywhere about deer stalking specifically, and nobody seemed able to point me in any particular direction. So the year dragged on, and then somebody that had known I was looking phoned me and said, Basque are putting on these ladies' introduction into deer stalking days. And there were only 4 places on a day, and I think initially they only had 1 day running. And I tried to get on it, it was full, but they realised that it was going to be popular and quickly had to put on another 3 days, sorry. So that was my introduction, and Louise Farmer again set those up with Jim Riley over at Chippenham Park, Cambridgeshire.
Okay. Yeah.
It was fantastic. It was a bit like a mini DSC1, to be fair. We covered all sorts of, from identification, a bit about ballistics, shooting positions, all sorts, and then we all went out on a mini stalk at the end of it. Nobody actually managed to shoot anything on the day, but thanks to Lou, very quickly that week I went out for my first deer locally at home, and got my first muntjac.
Fantastic.
And that was me hooked.
That was the thing that got you hooked.
That got me hooked, but it was still incredibly difficult to find where to go or who to approach, and so it was a very slow progress.
I think the world of deer stalking, though, as you in England, definitely, it's still, you mention deer and the green-eyed monster comes out in many people, and they don't want to share. They've got their bit of land, they've got their bit of shooting, and it really is tricky to get in. And because I think everybody, the way I looked at it was everybody was worried that somebody else was going to come along and steal their permission. And
that's still, isn't it?
And that's what people don't like. Whereas I think Scotland's a bit completely different. So yeah, I'm always offering, come and shoot deer. I've got too many. Just come and take what you want, kind of thing. It's not a bother to me. It's not like they're going to disappear, and there's plenty of them. So let's fire that question over to you, Heather. How did it all come about for you?
Slightly different to Kate, only in that my experience didn't start with any education, really. So similar, I had an air rifle and was dealing with vermin. I was working on farms at the time, and then I was teaching practical skills, sort of countryside and agriculture. Okay. And part of that syllabus was, wildlife management, countryside management, and I was sort of preaching about managing deer and that sort of thing, but I'd never actually done it myself. And I spend quite a lot of time up here in Scotland, so I thought I'd ask around, and no one that I knew was able to point me in the right direction. So I actually asked on Deer Stalking UK on Facebook, and that actually opened up quite a few different avenues, which was quite surprising. I was mainly interested in the field to fork part of it. Okay. I wasn't overly worried at the time about actually shooting the deer, but if that was possible, then that would have been great. So that put me in touch with 2 people. One was Alba Deer Stalking up north, and they offered me a day on the Hinds, which I took, and that's where it really started for me. So
nothing like a baptism of fire, then coming straight to Scotland and going straight for the Hinds.
I know, yeah. Well, I didn't really know anything about seasons at the time. I just said, I'm going to be up in this week. Can I go out with someone? And it happened to be hind season. So I met this guy in a car park of a supermarket in Tain. Got in his truck, had no idea who he was just sort of
of all places, faith. Tain as well.
Yeah,
exactly. You couldn't have asked for a more stranger place.
And then we sort of carried on north. I'm sure it was another couple of hours. We ended up around the sort of Ben Loyal area. So we ended up on the top of this hill, and I could see the sea. I was like, you're not going to get much further north than this. And we'd spotted deer quite early on, but it was a massive stalk to then come back round the hill to actually get round back onto them. So I was like, wow, okay, this is a lot more than I would sort of bargained for. But I took a deer, and after that I was just like, this is unbelievable. I've got to do this again.
No, fantastic.
The view was insane. Even without the deer, it was a gorgeous walk. So it was a sort of privilege to be able to shoot deer there. And it also put me in touch with Emma, who started Ladies Rifle Club in the Cotswolds.
Okay.
Part of Albarn Larder, which is Mike Robinson's place.
That's right, yep.
Her and her husband, Brent, were working there and were able to put on a day where I met Louise Farmer and a couple of other women, Kate.
Yeah.
And they did like a range day. They also had UK DTR there, so they did sort of shot sight and a really fantastic thing called the Bambi game.
Yeah.
And they had various sort of sellers there as
They
well.
took us around the larder and showed us the whole process and then Brent did some butchery in front of us.
Yeah, because Brent used to be really, really up on his social media and everything about stalking, and then obviously, that was like the stalking relationship that grew, wasn't it? Emma and Brent, and then they got married, and then it's all gone very quiet. Obviously, family life and everything else has taken over. But he went down to the larder and worked down there for a bit. But that's really good. That obviously that's social media again working at its finest, isn't it? Bringing everybody together and making it work.
Yeah.
So that's really cool.
I didn't realise either at that point quite how popular it was with women. Like I was into shotgun shooting, and that was quite well catered for.
Yes.
There's Shotgun and Chelsea Bun Club, and there was the Femme Fatales at the time. There's often like ladies' cups, but for rifle shooting, I didn't really know it was a thing. I think it's quite individual, and she filled a day. I don't know how many of us were there. 30 of us.
About 30 of us. She ran 2 days, and both days were full, I think.
Yeah, it was really popular, and I met some people that I'm still in touch with now. Obviously, Kate, and we've grown our own group out of that. But they were massive inspirations to me. People like Lindy, women that are out there.
Holly.
Actually doing it. Holly, doing it for themselves. They weren't doing it with a partner or with their dad. Like, they were standalone stalkers, and
Fantastic.
I was like, okay, this is actually
a thing.
Possible. Yeah,
this is a thing.
Yeah,
Well, it is possible. I think the biggest problem is there's always been the stereotype that the stereotypical stalker is some fella that's hairy-assed and goes up on the hill kind of thing.
I still think that is there is that still. I feel
it is, but actually, I think. We've discussed it on all sorts of podcasts. It's come up on different podcasts. I was just listening to one of the guys from the States, Blood Origins, and there's this thing about, though, you take a lady out stalking and she's a cold, hard killer. You ask her to take the shot. There's no adrenaline problems. There's nothing like that. There's no buck fever. They go, where do you want me to shoot it? You say, just shoot it there. Squeeze the trigger, bang, it falls over. Then you might have your sort of moment of happiness and euphoria. But up until that point, you've got a fella out there. Where do you want me to shoot it? The rifle's bouncing up and down. His heart's going. You can literally hear his heart next to you. And it's like, you just need to calm down, fella, before you take that shot. And sometimes these guys miss. But every lady I've ever had out stalking, it has been just aim on, squeeze the trigger, bump, and it falls over.
no pressure, Kate.
So we're after this podcast, we're going to go stalking. We're going to have a look around a couple of bits of woodland and forestry. So
we're looking forward. We're looking forward to this.
So but that it is fantastic that obviously you've managed to develop from that, get a whole bunch of people together, and that probably leads us on to the next question. You've obviously started Artemis Deer Stalking, which is like a ladies' deer stalking club.
Yeah. I guess we're really just a Facebook group because we're non-profit.
Okay.
There's no membership fee or anything. And I think from our own experiences, we realised how difficult it was.
Yeah.
And I don't know about you, a lot of blokes would say to me, oh, fantastic, a woman deer stalking. We need more women in deer stalking. And they kind of felt, I think, that they'd said it, but then there was nothing to back it up. There was nowhere to go. There was what did you do with these women that wanted to go deer stalking? Who do you put them in touch with? And I think off the back of our own experiences was where the idea comes from. And that, again, from our own experiences, we've met now quite a lot of people because we've both started roughly about the same time. So we're kind of 5 to 6 years in.
Okay.
And ironically, when you're on your own, phoning round, cold calling people, it's very hard to get going. But the instant you start a group, people are more interested.
Yes.
So you get more offers. You get to meet a lot of people in the industry, and I think we get a lot of support from within the industry. In fact, embarrassingly so much so that sometimes it feels like somebody will say, oh, we'll do this with you. But we know that we probably won't get enough people to fill that day and make it viable for them to run.
Okay.
So that's that's the next difficulty.
Yeah, yeah.
Is getting the ladies out there doing it.
I was going to say, as it's like a Facebook group and it's nobody's paying a membership fee, they don't kind of have that feel that I want to get my value for money. So they'll turn up if they're available to turn up, but they're not going to go, well, hang on a minute, I've paid a membership fee, I need to be at this event kind of thing. So
We have sort of toyed with the idea of a club as well as the group. We've not really got any further with that because we seem to have the same dozen people
okay,
that will regularly attend or put their hand up for stuff. And whether I don't know if that's because of their personal situation, it's easier maybe for them to do stuff than for some of the other ladies. And as Heather's already said, there are a lot of ladies already in Stalking that you won't ever see or hear of because they're established. They've either got their own ground or they're with their partner and they run some sort of a business. They don't need to be involved in those sort of the events that we run. So going forward, I don't know whether we will have a club eventually. Or...
Yeah, I think we're still very much in our infant stages. Like we only started October last year, so we're still very much getting our name out there and letting people know that we actually exist. I think most of the conversations we have currently are people saying, oh, I didn't know that was a thing, and, you know, bringing them into the fold, as it were. I wonder if, on the industry side of things, I think forming a club almost gave people that tangible way. You know, you said that you get people say, oh, we need more women in stalking, but, you know, that would have taken effort and time, and not everyone has that to give. So by using us as a way of them actually showing their support, we've sort of taken that responsibility away from them to have to personally do something. We can arrange and do that sort of intermediary of putting events on. They can say, well, we've got this establishment, or we can give you this range time or whatever, and we can do all the in-between, which has been fantastic. And, you know, we really do have to sing the praises of people that are willing to do that. And we're not just events, you know, we understand our sort of limitations until we you know, we do
in the stalking world, 6 years we're kind of still novices in a lot of people's eyes.
Yeah, hugely. And I think we definitely underestimate what we've learnt as well. You know, we would still class ourselves as beginners, or, you know, we don't presume to know more than we do, and we do rely on people in the industry to help us get the right message out there.
Every day is a school day. Everybody,
absolutely.
And any stalker that says he knows it all doesn't, because you can still learn something even off a novice or a new stalker. You can suddenly go, God, that's a simple technique. Where did you learn that?
I had this conversation with someone who's on about running some events only the other day, in that mixed level experiences on a day is a really good thing. Because even the novices, depending on who they have been out with, who they've come across in the industry, can drop some little gem in there.
100%.
And everyone goes, wow, I wished I'd known that, you know, a long time ago. So it's good to get people to... I know, like, deer stalking is predominantly a very antisocial thing, really, isn't it? You go off on your own.
It's quite isolated.
It doesn't have to be, though.
I find when people get together, they actually really enjoy it.
Yeah, I always think that actually going out stalking with somebody can actually be more fun. Yes, it's a great place to go and get your headspace. If you've had a really busy day or a stressful day, to go out and sit down and let the nature come around you, that's fantastic. But I'm at the point now where I've probably shot enough deer to actually be out there with somebody and just to chat shit for no apparent reason, and then go, well, be quiet now, we might see somebody come out, and wait for somebody to come out and potentially see the smile on their face when they pull the trigger. That's more important than anything.
I completely agree, and I think it's lovely sometimes to be able to share, because, as you say, you're out in nature. Some of the things you get to see, obviously you appreciate it yourself, but to be able to say to somebody, look at that, wow, how lucky are we who gets to see this stuff? You know,
totally.
To share that experience is quite special as well, isn't it?
Yeah, and nature just, it happens around you. It's one of those things that I think 90% of the population probably don't see. They'll go for their dog walk down the track, and they're completely oblivious that there's stuff happening either side of them. Driving down the road, I think I've talked about it before. Like my kids look out the window now; they know how to spot deer, and you'll hear a little voice in the back pointing out, "There's deer in that field," or "There's something over there." And most children in a car pay no attention to what's down the side of them. I'm always told to pay attention to the road and stop looking in every field because you're always trying to spot something. But it's just one of those things, and I think being able to share the experience is great, but also it can be. I think there are a lot of guys and girls that probably do go out just for that on their lonesome because that's what they want to do.
Yeah.
But I think there's a whole generation that would probably say, they'd rather go out with somebody just for the company.
I must admit, although like I've said, 6 years is comparatively no time at all. We've had some ladies and friends of mine that have joined the group that are younger and have shot their first deer through us. And I'm just as thrilled for them as if, in fact, more so now, I think, than if I'd shot something myself.
Yeah.
To see their reaction, and it's fantastic.
Still taking somebody out for their first deer, doesn't matter how many times you've done it, it's still one of the best possible feelings, because
feel good factor.
Well, it's the reaction you get, their entire everything that they're going through. You go, well, I've been there, I've done that, and I'm seeing it again, and you kind of experience it again.
That's a huge part of the group for us, actually. I think the ability to share in a safe space. There's a lot of stuff around social media being the death of the sport because people don't want to see pictures of dead animals, and that's entirely understandable, and I completely see where people are coming from. I think when people take their first deer, it kind of is a bit of a rite of passage. They have a massive respect for that animal, and it's a huge achievement for them, and very often you do want to take a picture with that deer. So the group that we run is private, and that means that anything that's posted there can't be seen by anyone outside of the group. It's a safe space to share that, and for people to share in that win with you without it being sort of abhorrent to the wider public.
Okay.
And it also means that a lot of stalkers that we speak to and that we work with, like you, absolutely adore taking people out for their first deer, and that's where the group really comes into its own, because we've got guides that we know and we trust that we can put women in touch with, and we know they're going to be safe, they're going to be looked after, the person that they're going with knows what they're doing, and we're able to share that with them. Loads of stalking guides or stalkers are genuinely decent people
100%.
that also want to give people that first experience. They take the same amount of joy that you do from giving people that first experience of deer, and that's awesome. Like, to be in a position to have the privilege to do that for people, for us, is massive.
Definitely.
Yeah. So the next, you touched on that, obviously, about the group. Why just a ladies group? Can you? And obviously, there'll be people out there. There'll be people listening that go, well, there's no men's group, so why is it just a ladies group? And I think that's really important to just give an overview as to why it was formed and the reason for it, so that listeners can understand.
I think it's very misconceived that we're not trying to be exclusive at all. It was to enable ladies who are less confident and sometimes for personal reasons or whatever, don't feel comfortable in the company of men, or a few men, and it gives them somewhere where they can ask questions and get advice
100%.
without being made to feel silly or small. And so we actually, although it's a ladies group, there is a percentage of guys on there who are all something within the industry.
Okay.
Be they professional stalkers or RFDs, people that run DSC1 courses. We've got the likes of WMS.
Right.
So a mixed group of guys on there who are all extremely professional, and hopefully these ladies feel that they can then ask questions within our group and get sensible answers from genuinely knowledgeable people. And I think we're not trying to, as I said, we're not trying to be exclusive. I think the idea is that we get these ladies up to a level that they are confident and competent enough then to go to become, to feel that they'd be accepted in the bigger deer stalking industry.
Yeah, I think you probably hit the nail on the head there. I think social media, especially, and you just raised your eyebrows. I say that I think I've talked about it before, that if a lady posts something and puts something up, there can be a mixed bag of reviews come out of that. There can be guys that are really supportive and people that are really supportive, but then there can be a whole load of things that almost belittling and stuff like that, because somebody's asked a question and you should know that, or why are you even doing this, or oh, you need to do it that way. And I think you've hit the nail on the head really with having a group that's full of supportive people, that there's no such thing as a stupid question. Everybody asks that question really just to get confidence.
Often I think there's a lot of people out there who've gone, oh, thank God someone's asked that.
Yes, yeah, because they didn't want to ask it themselves because they worried, but somebody goes and I'll ask that, and they get an honest answer. And I think you mentioned earlier, obviously, Deer Stalking UK on Facebook page.
Yeah.
There's a few other groups, but yeah, that one is probably one of my the funniest ones to read, because I would say that many of the stalkers on there probably don't do a lot of stalking, but they're well and truly happy to tell you that. Yeah,
they're all experts.
They're all experts. Yeah.
Yeah.
Because it was funny, because talk to the guys on the hill and most of the lads out here, it's like they haven't got time to be sat on Facebook all the time.
No,
we're out doing stuff.
Yeah.
So if you can be there and answer every question, it's like, well, you're obviously not doing a lot, are you?
Yeah.
And it's amazing, because some of the answers are just absolutely wild.
Well, I feel sorry actually for Guy. I maybe somebody needs to set up a group for either mixed or for guys. I'm not sure, coming into the sport industry, because sometimes I see someone who's a complete novice bloke on one of the bigger deer stalking pages, and they'll ask a perfectly innocent question that anyone would ask if they were starting out and had no idea what they were doing, and they get shot down sometimes. But I have noticed more recently that as many people as will take the mick, there will be a few guys in there going, hey, hang on a minute, not necessary, and we'll give them an answer. And I think that's a good thing.
I've noticed it now that actually I get a lot of probably DMs from people that they don't want to post it out. They'll just send you a message that we've listened to the podcast or something like that. Can you explain or tell me why or what I should do? It's like, yeah, but don't just take my word for it. Go and ask at least another 4 or 5 other people. Take everybody's information. But it's to the point where they obviously just won't post it up online because they're worried of the response they're going to get. And it's really sad. We're all in the same sort of field. We're all trying to do the same thing, but yet it just seems to be that there is a lot. Well, it all goes back to that early point. It's that negativity of, well, you've got more land than I have, and you've got the deer stalking.
I think it's important to say as well, before anyone thinks that we're like hating on the man. Kate said that we work with a lot of good people, but I do think really the majority are great.
Good.
Yeah, the majority are good, and it is just that small
minority.
minority.
There is a minority.
Yeah, that unfortunately kind of spoils it for the rest.
But I think those are the lone guns.
They're in all walks of life, aren't they?
Yeah, exactly.
But in the whole shooting industry, it's not. It happens over every discipline. There's a minority that are out there, and this is our problem. Why the sport at the moment is so broken, because if you take a look at it that way, we have got this minority, and some of them are high-profile minority that cause more damage than good, because they have got the platform to come across on, and unfortunately, it doesn't do the sport any good.
No, and unfortunately, those voices always seem to be the loudest, don't they? Because, like you say, the people that are actually out there doing it don't have the time or the inclination to fight their corner. They've got a job to do, and it's not in their best interest to be spending all day on social media trying to
100%
get on top of it.
So yeah, it's a really difficult situation, and I think the world's got incredibly small with social media. but it's, as we've said at the beginning, it has a fantastic. It's brought a lot of people together, but
Definitely.
as well as that, it can also divide a lot of people at the same time. So, have you guys had? Let's carry on with the social media feed a minute. Have you had rough experiences, obviously being ladies in deer stalking, posting stuff on any of the sites and anything like that, or has it always been fairly positive?
I tend to censor myself, to be perfectly honest, because I know it can be really divisive. I shoot a fair amount now. I'm very fortunate. I'm hugely grateful for my opportunities. And over the years, I've hit some pretty big milestones that I've wanted to share. And like most recently, I finished my UK6.
Okay.
And the first thing I did was tell Kate. Because she's the person that I always tell if I've sort of achieved something. And the next thing I wanted to do was put it on our group. And then I thought, this is the sort of thing you would share on
100%.
the larger groups. Like
Yeah.
it's quite a big deal in this country to do that. It's what a lot of people sort of aim for. And I wasn't doing it intentionally, but I was still proud to have done it. And I thought, do you know what, I'm not going to. And I haven't posted it on any of the wider groups because I didn't want to put myself in a position where I could get people saying whatever, like, oh, you paid to do it, or you're not a real stalker, or, all these things.
But that's a real shame because actually, exactly as you said, it's something to be proud of. You've done the UK6. I still haven't completed mine, and I'm 15 years into deer stalking.
Yeah.
Still waiting on my Chinese water deer that I never can get to because the stags and the hinds are in.
Yeah.
But you should be proud to put it up there, and nobody should be able to come back at you. But yeah, you're probably right. There are probably people out there that would give you not abuse, but they wouldn't give you a positive response. Let's just say.
Absolutely. I mean, and as you probably know, we started off with a different name a couple of years ago, and we had somebody asked why is there on DSUC, why there is a need for just a ladies group.
Yep.
So we tried to answer sensibly, and this got into an argument, shall we say, online on Facebook, and DSUC actually had to take it down in the end.
Right.
It went on and on and on. This guy was just relentless. We tried to explain that we weren't purely a ladies group, and that, as I've said, it wasn't to be exclusive. It was to try to get people to be included.
It's more inclusive, isn't it? Yeah, absolutely.
But it went on and on. So yes, there is still. But I do think we do still get the odd negativity. But I do think in the time I've been doing this, it's changed noticeably.
But that's really good, and that's kind of really nice to hear, because actually there are a lot more ladies in field sports, and it's not just stalking, it's not just clay shooting, it's not just pheasant shooting. Your social feeds are full of, it's a real mix now of everybody getting involved, and there doesn't seem to be that, oh well, this is just for the guys. It's everybody's allowed to do it, and there's no rights or wrongs. So it really is. It's nice to see it. But yeah, I can understand why you've got your group, and it's important at the end of the day, because there are some ladies that probably would lack that confidence or other issues that would mean that being around men could be a problem.
Unfortunately, yes.
It is a reality. It's it plays into much wider sort of social issues, in that most women unfortunately will have experienced some negativity of some varying severity, some incredibly severe, and therefore it could be a massive barrier to them that the only way into the sport would be via a male connection. So having the opportunity to get into the sport through us, or any other ladies groups, we're not out for ourselves. Like, the more people that get involved, the better. Like, if someone else wanted to set up a ladies group, then we'd be all for it, and we'd be incredibly supportive.
It's really noticeable on the days that we run how incredibly supportive the women are of each other.
Good. Yeah.
There's competition, but it's almost fun competition. And if somebody's achieved something that maybe they didn't think they would, or that nobody else has achieved. There's no element of jealousy ever. Everyone's so thrilled and cheerful and as I say, supportive of each other. You come away from a day like that and it really gives you a boost, doesn't it? It makes you think, I'm glad we're doing what we're doing, because there are days when you're bogged down with so much stuff that but no one else sees because it's not on social media. There's a lot goes on behind the scenes. And sometimes you sort of sit there and you think, why am I doing this? But then you walk away from days like that and experiences like our coal weekends, and a couple of girls have been on that and shot their first deer on a coal weekend.
Right.
And it's just the buoyancy, isn't it? It's incredible.
It's massively empowering, I think. There's a part of it that for me, traditionally, like, men are hunters, you know.
Yeah.
If you go like right
back, yeah.
And that
until you get back to Artemis.
Yeah, until you get back to Artemis, obviously.
But I suppose that's the way. If you look at everything, it's the man went out hunting, the lady stayed at home and tended to the family.
Which is why I think what we do is it goes beyond deer stalking. I think deer stalking is the sort of vessel for it, but actually it's just giving women an outlet to be empowered, to feel like they're in control of their own destiny. You know, they can provide for themselves, they can provide for their family.
100%.
And it's a much bigger thing than just
Well,
actually being capable of carrying a rifle
pulling
and
a
using
trigger,
it.
yeah.
Actually, it's a really interesting one, because it's the topic of you are life bringers, but you are doing your life takers at the same time, whereas the guy is just there and we go out and hunt. But actually, to have a lady that can go out and do that and deal with all the emotion that goes around with it, that's a phenomenal thing at the end of the day, because that's one of those, as you say, empowering points, isn't it? You are the bringers of life, but you're also taking it away.
I wonder if that's why the men that are negative towards it are, because if women can do all of it, then
we're not
they're
needed.
Not overly necessary.
But
it's kind of maybe slightly emasculating for some people that women are just as capable.
I would say exactly that, and I think that you probably hit the nail on the head there. There's that, I'm the man, I'm the hunter, I go out and do this.
The knuckle draggers.
But you do have to wonder whether there's something missing. There's a lack of information, or how they haven't been informed. They don't have the correct set of information in front of them to see all of that, and the way that they've been brought up, or something along those lines. That's just the way it's been. Something to do with early life, the way their family was. Man did this, mother was.
It's often inherent, isn't it?
It is,
Yeah.
and I think that's it. And if that's the way you've always been brought up, and you go back to the older generations and you listen to like the grandfathers that were out with a hunter, they didn't ever talk to the children. Children were seen and not heard. It all came down in written form and things like that. So there are some families where this doesn't happen, and it just passes on. And but in this day and age, modern society, if they're on the internet, God, they should be able to see that things have changed a bit and moved on.
You'd hope so.
But obviously not.
Not in all cases, clearly.
Obviously not.
Clearly,
but
no.
It is a shame. But I'm really glad that it's working out for you and going forward. So, talk us through a typical sort of event. If you organise something, what happens? How do people get involved? Obviously, if we've got my demographic is, I don't know what my demographic of male to female listeners is, but tell us, if anybody suddenly listens to this and goes, I want to join that, what are they going to do?
Well, it depends. We do quite a variety of events, don't we? We try to make it as broad as possible, because although our main aim is to get women into deer stalking, there are women that maybe don't want to pull the trigger, but they do still want to be involved in putting food on the table. So we don't just do shooting events, we do non-shooting events as well. We do
butchery.
Range days, we do butchery days. Sometimes we'll try and combine the two so that you get a feel for the sort of field to fork element, even if it's not actually shooting a live deer. We also do non-shooting events that will hopefully be educational for people that are interested in more than just the shooting side of things. So events like we've got in Kelso will be a mixture, and then later in the year we've got a safari weekend at Watatunga in Norfolk.
Oh, fantastic.
So Molly is sort of one of the main people that work there, so obviously we will try and do events with other women in the industry where we can.
Yep.
Unfortunately, that can be quite limiting. So we do, make it as varied as possible. But when we can, we'll work with other women in the industry. And the idea of that weekend is to be a bit of a social, because like we've mentioned, deer stalking can be quite isolating.
Yeah.
And it can be hard for women to sort of link up with other women in the sport. It's sometimes difficult to know whether it's acceptable to bring up shooting deer in conversation when you first meet people. So social events mean that you're all there for the same reason, and
Yes.
it's going to be acceptable to talk about. You're not going to have anyone sort of screaming and running away when you tell them that you shoot deer. And also to be educational. So they have a lot of species there that we don't have in the UK. So they're going to do like a cull and butchery session for us on a species that we don't have in the UK.
Oh, fantastic.
So that'll be awesome.
Which we then get to eat.
Yeah, we're going to barbecue it. So
Whatever it is.
yeah,
Fantastic.
we're not entirely sure what species it will be yet, but it just kind of
As long
shows
as it's not
that
one of the
there's
tiny pygmy ones,
Yeah,
you'll be
yeah.
all right. You'll have to judge it on the
Very
size of the
small
audience.
barbecue. Yeah.
It could be quite fun as well, because we get, with the accommodation, you get 2 of the buggies
Okay.
for 24 hour.
24-hour access, yeah, so we can go out on the
24
park
access to the park, yeah. So
in the dark, so we could take thermals out and use sort of
Fantastic.
equipment like that. So yeah, it'll be really interesting. But
Oh,
also
brilliant.
our cull weekends have become kind of legend, haven't they, in the years that we've been doing them.
Yeah, we get a lot of support from a guy in Norfolk, Lee Cooper, who doesn't do much on social media anymore. But he's 100% behind us, and he loves to have a ladies' cull team down there.
Okay.
And he will take out. So most of us get put in high seats and rotated. But the ones that don't have their own FAC or rifle or whatever reason, he will, and a couple of his friends, guide whoever. And he said he's just thrilled. He said he took somebody the other last time, and there was a deer. He'd got a Chinese across a field or something, and she said, "Oh, I'm not comfortable shooting that distance." And he said that absolutely made my day. So most guys would have just
Yeah.
had a
I
go.
can have a go at that.
I can have a go at that. And he said that you're that responsible, and that you've got the animals' welfare
Yeah.
in your mind. He said it absolutely made my day. So, but I think leading on to education, I don't know. I think I wish we had more people that we could run stuff with. Not actual people that would join a day, join an event, because we've got so many ideas for educational stuff. I think a lot of people leading up to your level 1, there's a lot you can do. You can keep going stalking, and there's all you've got to learn all the stuff for the manual and for the exam and everything. But then after that, there's a bit of a void, and I think this is for everybody. What do you do between your level 1 and 2?
Well, yeah, exactly. You're supposed to go out and stalk, aren't you?
Which isn't always viable to go out as often as you'd like.
No, 100%.
And also things like gralloching. This is our
sticking point, yeah.
Often if you go out on a guided stalk, so it's probably someone who's been at work all day. You're going out last light if it's winter, and you've got something on the ground. They've been busy all day. They want to get home and have their dinner. They gralloch it in the dark. They know what they're doing. It's done.
Yeah,
Gone.
100%.
And so, obviously, it's incredibly difficult to set up gralloching courses, because you've got to have X amount of ungrallocked deer carcasses. So, there's lots of things. I wish we could do more to help people.
If every stalker literally put an open offer out and said, I'll take a novice stalking and let you do everything, and you get to keep the carcass, do you know what? Suddenly education comes. I've done it. I put a post, what's that now? 6 years ago on Facebook, and I wanted to get more people into stalking, and said, if you want to come stalking, just send me a message, and you don't have to pull the trigger. You can come out, we'll do the whole process. I'll shoot it if you just want to learn about the butchery and things like that. And it was ended up that, a friend's sister suddenly added me on Facebook and went, I hope this is a bit cheeky, but can I come stalking? Yeah, no problem. Her and her boyfriend came up, stalked. And we didn't, obviously, the first time I did the Gralloch, but I got them to do, she took off the hooves and I showed her, and they went, well, you've got deer, carry on. And then I've had a guest up recently, and he's just completed he's done his level 1, but he wants more experience. Every deer he shot, I showed him the first one and said, crack on, you can do the rest. It's not a bother to me, but I think a lot of stalkers, exactly as you said, they're tired, they want to get in, they just want the job done.
Which is understandable.
We totally get it.
And I think, as you said, financially, it can be expensive. If you're down south and you want to go out and shoot something, it can be a lot of money. And come up here and you want to go after a stag or something like that, again, it's a fair whack of cash. But the hind days that you were talking about, cull days, they're great experiences, but that's where you just want somebody to go, well, actually, do you know what, come out with me, come and go stalking. Oh, you've shot it, you crack on, I'll talk you through it. And if there's that many deer stalkers in the UK, if everybody just gave one opportunity, suddenly all these new people coming into it would have a fantastic chance to actually experience it. And people screw the Gralloch up and you get green on places, but it doesn't really matter that much. This whole thing about, you've got green in it. Nobody eats the inside of the rib cage.
No, and also, that's important if it's going into the food chain for sale, but most of us, it's just going in our own freezer, isn't it?
Exactly.
You're not supposed to rinse them out.
No.
But how many of us do? If it's just going into our own consumption,
it's one
you
of
give
those
it a little
things.
swirl round and you're like,
If it's
fine.
bloody
it'll be fine.
Yeah.
Well, I remember having many arguments with hill stalkers about you're not supposed to wash the deer out and all the rest of it. A small amount of water and a cloth and wipe it dry. I became a hill stalker. Every carcass that goes back gets a good wash because that's what the game dealer wants to see. They want a clean carcass. And I was like, I'm kind of gone against my own word, but you can understand it, that the game dealer turns up and he says, I like a clean inside of the rib cage, whereas you personally would be just like, I'll just wipe that out and that's fine. Most of the deer that's probably being shot in the UK is probably going into people's freezers and they're eating it. So actually, if you do get a bit of green in there, it really makes no major headaches. You're going to trim the bits off you want to eat. And that's it.
It smells gross at the time, so you try not to do it again.
Yeah.
That's a good reason not to.
It's when you get a phone call. You've been out stalking, and you get a phone call. Then, where are you? I'm on my way back. I'm just picking up a deer. Oh, I've shot when it was in the vegetable patch. Right. I wanted you to come and help me load it on the quad. No, I'm busy. All right. Do you want it? Yeah, go on then, leave it by your gate, I'll pick it up on the way back. And you can smell it as you come up the road and you think, he didn't really Gralloch it, the bullet did the Gralloching for you. And it's just like you get that carcass home and you look at it and go, it's not even fit for consumption for the dog, but there you go. So everybody has bad days, but as you say, if we could share that experience, and hopefully maybe your group, as you guys develop and it grows, you'll have more stalkers that will have their own bits of land, and that's one of those things that you can then offer.
I'm in talks with a couple of people at the moment who, unless it happens I won't reveal, but who manage deer parks and things, and have said maybe it could be a possibility that on some of their cold days, and everything comes back to the larder to be grallocked, you can have a little team of people there and watch, learn, have a go on their cold day without pulling a trigger. And I think there's a few things between your level 1 and level 2 that you don't necessarily get a chance to do as often as you'd like to.
Well, I think with the changes in level 2 as well, being just that one stalk now, it really has sort of taken away that because obviously when it was 3 stalks you had 3 opportunities. If you messed the first one up, you had another 2 attempts, and on the first one that wouldn't necessarily be a mess up. You could write it down as well, we nicked the green, blah blah blah, and it was all documented. But you've got to do it all in one hit this time, and it's like that's the only bit I think that level 2 probably changed for the worse, was making it just the one. But then again, you go back down to England, and a lot of people pay a lot of money to go out and do those stalks to try and get level 2. I've heard people saying they've spent thousands just to get their level 2.
I can believe it.
I find it really interesting as well, and it might get a bit controversial now. We, as a group, advocate for education in all forms,
Yep.
be that DMQ or the PDS courses. We work with both.
Good.
We work with providers of DSE courses. We both did our DSE 1, but we're also, we're friends with Peter and Andrea.
And I think they've got a fantastic... They've basically brought something to the market that shakes the market up.
They're both,
And that's
perfectly
what people
valid.
don't like,
yeah,
isn't it?
They're both perfectly valid, and we're, as we've been talking about, a women's group, and women face other barriers to the sport that men don't necessarily. So women tend to be quite time poor in terms of, all right, me and Kate are the exceptions maybe, but a lot of women have a family.
Yep.
And that can be a huge barrier because childcare is expensive and can be difficult for people to source if they don't have a good support network. And to, swan off and do a 2 or 3 day DSC 1 course, paying for a hotel if they're not local, fuel even if they are, it's a huge outlay in time and in money. And actually, although the PDS courses, are obviously still charged, it can be done at your own rate. They can put the kids to bed and they can then do a unit a night or
100%.
or whatever.
Yeah.
It makes it more accessible. So, I always say it's horses for courses. As long as people are sort of guided towards getting a good education in general, regardless of what provider they go for, we back that and we advocate for that, because the better educated people are coming into the sport, the more likely that sport's going to have integrity for the future.
Long legs.
Well,
Given the current climate. And
100%. And it's really interesting because the UK is probably one of the only places where education isn't mandatory. So I've just been over to Lithuania and I've met German hunters, Austrian hunters, Swedish, Norwegian.
they have fantastic hunting, don't they?
Well, if you're a German hunter, you're going to be a year, and you're almost doing not quite degree level, but there's a lot of study and coursework and stuff like that before you even go out and do your shooting test. And then every year, some of them you have to go to the range and prove. So if you want to go and do driven boar, some of the clubs and areas you have to go and prove every year that you can still do those 3 shots at that boar crossing. And I'm just like, I'm blown away by it. And it's like, this is fantastic, because actually it means that you don't get stale. Everybody understands it, and you have to keep up to date. And we all talk about the Americans having hundreds of guns and all the rest of it. But even then, hunter education starts at high school. If you want your hunting permit, you start learning that to get your hunting permit, and then you can go out and shoot. And whereas in the UK, I feel we're just like grandfather rights, so you can go out and shoot anything. And it does come to a point when you see people do Grallochs, and you're like, yeah, what's going on there?
Well, we both doubt us. This is our, as we've said, this is our sticking point, and we both doubt that
We're ready.
we're ready to
Yeah.
do level 2, whichever way you do it. And then you see some of the pictures
Or you go out
on
with
social
people.
media, and
Yep.
the car. You see somebody put a picture of a chiller with some carcasses in, and you kind of think, maybe I'm not as bad as I think I am.
I think mine look better than that sometimes.
There's
So I think much to a lot of people's disgust probably in the sport, I do think we need to have more education
I completely
available.
agree.
And
The more options, the better, as far as we're concerned.
I think it's going to get, firearms laws are going to get more stringent, and I think probably it's going to be compulsory, isn't it, to have some form of...
It was going to be written into legislation that DSC 1 was going to be a mandatory requirement, but it never actually paid off. and they couldn't do it because there was too many other arguments against it. But it's one of those things that some police forces do use it as you have to have this before we're going to give you a deer legal caliber. But
which isn't law at the moment.
And people moan about it. Oh, it's my right to have a... Well, it's not really. The law used to say it was your right to defend your property. You could have a shotgun. You had to have good reason to have a firearm. But I think education behind that and understanding it, because some of the stuff you see over the years, and even going out with guys that have stalked for 20 or 30 years, you watch them Gralloch a deer and it's literally like hands into the hedge. It's like, did you check any of that? How did you know your deer was healthy? Well, it looked all right to me. It's like, guys, there's so many things that we look for and we go through. But yeah, it's tricky. And at the end of the day, it doesn't matter how long it takes you to Gralloch that deer. Once it's dead, it's dead. It ain't going to run away anymore. So if you want to be slow, steady and methodical, be slow, steady and methodical. It's not a race. I know there's lots of people out there, you see them and they're like, how fast? Oh, I can Gralloch a deer this quick, blah, 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 blah. So I don't really care. Doesn't matter how fast you Gralloch it. I can have a cup of tea, sit down and watch you Gralloch it, or I can do it in my own leisure. It's one of those things.
No, yeah.
And as you say, education is seriously, it's lacking.
And I think going forward, this is just my personal opinion, so obviously it's not... if we want deer stalking to carry on in the way that we know it as it is, I do think that the more education, the more courses that people can put on and supply, it's only beneficial
100%.
to keep it going.
Yeah, and I think that little bit
because there are changes coming, aren't there? I think.
Well, considering today we're at 4th of July. It's general election day. We're recording this. Who knows what the future holds for shooting? Just as we sit here now,
yeah, it could change dramatically.
It could change dramatically. But education, if we can go forward with a very educated view, and we present it properly, it will make such a big difference.
Absolutely.
To even the antis, because if you come back with an educated argument, you defend...
This is where I think most field sports fall down, don't they? The antis study everything, come up with all these statistics and all sorts of, and not even accurate often, but they put that argument forward, and that's what the public see.
Normally
we don't really come back with anything.
That's the way we've done it, and it's the way we've always done it.
Yeah, there's very much that sort of it's tradition, and there's so much more around it. It's so complex, and I listened to your previous podcast about The Last Keeper, and you can see how wide the effect of the shooting community is, not just in deer stalking, but in game shooting and every other sort of aspect of field sports. Like, it has a huge impact on actual real life people that don't even own a gun.
I think,
and they don't realise how far the reach is. It's not just
no, you're right.
tops with rifles.
And I was going to say the most poignant point that comes out of that film when you do get to see it, and I think I spoke about it there, was it's the keepers that come in to put the wildfire out. Those guys rock up on the hill, they set a backfire, they burn the hill, and then you've already got a helicopter over there trying to put the fire out that they've just lit to stop. And it is that fighting fire with fire, and it's like, you want to do away with all of this, well, let's watch the countryside burn.
Yeah, basically. Yeah.
If we do, and it already happens. You've got the North Yorkshire moors have massive fires on them, and they burnt for hours or days or weeks because there's no management down there. It's been turned into a nature reserve. And so we can talk. We could go off on that tangent quite happily. And
I just say we don't. I use the royal we, and for all hunting, shooting sports. I think you've been made to keep. It's almost like it's been driven underground, isn't it? Keep it quiet. Nobody, the general public don't want to see you even catching a fish these days.
No, it's to take away the.
So it's hard, because then you want to put across and educate, but how do you do that?
The reality is there's a dead animal at the end of it, isn't there? And that's unpalatable to a lot of people. Possibly
the grip and grin photos, as they talk about, may be one of those things that if we don't do that, and less of that goes up on social media, And I think we're all probably bad for it. And when I first started, it was like take a picture of the deer where it lay kind of thing. But if you actually spend a few minutes and you present that animal really nicely and you take a photo, nobody can ever say, oh, that's disgusting, because actually in the right position, done right, it looks like that deer is quite content.
You've had the respect and the reverence for the animal, haven't you?
Exactly. And I think that's where everybody on social media, that's what
A responsibility.
we need to do now, and less of the, oh look, there's a dead fox with a big hole in it.
Oh god, yeah.
That's not. Let's not put that up.
Let's terrible.
Do something creative. Curl the fox up, let it sleep. So a lot of my fox pictures, the fox is always curled up, and it looks like it's just sleeping. And everybody says, "Why do you do that?" It's like, well, I want a photo of the fox, but it doesn't actually. Nobody can say anything nasty or negative about it. My deer, I'll try and prop their head up and things like that, and it'll always look as if the deer's just sitting there.
It's something that Europe do really well. You know, that respect for the animal, the last bite, and presenting them properly at the end of a hunt.
And that's a European thing. The last bite is very much their way of doing it. And yeah, it's come up in topics before, but yeah, this whole grip and grin. If we drop that and maybe spend 5 minutes before you take the photo and think, do I really want to post this?
Yeah.
And that's the responsibility of us as the hunter. If we all did that, then suddenly we've got a much better platform going forward.
It is difficult, isn't it? Because I also understand the element of, you might have stalked for hours to get that animal, and there's a certain element of pride, isn't there?
Yeah.
So it is difficult, because at the end of the day, why shouldn't you be able to post a picture of what you've achieved? But then outside of the hunting world,
it's not
acceptable. It's a very difficult thing.
30 years ago, 40 years ago, it was perfectly acceptable. I think the UK we're kind of I think it's spreading out throughout the world now, but
snowflakes.
The UK certainly has gone to a completely another level of adverse. They don't want responsibility. You put a piece of meat on I think there was a farmer's market put a picture up the other day, and it was 2 packets of mince. One was brown and one was perfectly bright pink.
And everyone wanted the bright pink.
Bright pink. Oh, the brown doesn't. It looks a bit. Oh, is it old? It's like, no, that's fresher than the bright pink, because that's had no chemicals
Additives.
or anything pumped into it. But that's conditioning. Have we conditioned the country
Absolutely
to be? Well, you've got to have the straight carrot and the nice pink meat.
Yeah.
And the plump chicken breast.
I'm really pleased, though, to see. I know quite a few people now that have got whatever relevant certification it is that you need, that are selling their own venison to the public with no middleman, VAT packed, and they sell a lot of venison. But interestingly, we were talking about this. Most people seems nowadays don't cook or don't know how to cook, or are frightened of cooking specifically game, which is doesn't contain a lot of fat, and it is. So they sell burgers, sausage, mince,
things that people know how to handle.
And if you break down a deer into that, you'll sell it every time.
As soon as you mentioned the word venison, everybody wants a bit. The amount of legs of venison, the number of legs of venison, I should say, that disappear from mine at Christmas. Like people, oh, have you got any venison? And it's like, I can't sell it, so it's normally a bottle of wine gets given to me, or a bottle of whiskey, depending on how much they have.
Yeah.
But Scotland's a bit different. I think in England you can sell a lot. It's easier to do it because you just need a food hygiene.
Yes.
And you just need your facility to be, which is your kitchen, if we all in purposes checked over.
Yeah.
Whereas obviously in Scotland you actually have to still achieve what's called a venison dealer's licence. Similar thing, but there's a bit more complexity to it. I'm in the process of hopefully going to go through it, because I've decided that we've just lost another big game dealer up here. They've closed down, so I've got one game dealer that's an hour's drive away, or another one that's 2 hours. It's Perth, the other one. So where do we get rid of venison from?
Well, interestingly, on my little tour of Scotland, I went back to Craigmega yesterday, which is somewhere I went to work as a volunteer in, I think it was early 2019. And I thought, I wasn't that far, I'll just pop up there and see who's about. And Rory Richardson still runs it. And all they have, so all the estate deer go through their own larder.
Yep.
And they've also set up a community larder at that larder that people can use. But they have a little handwritten sign in the car park at the bottom, because obviously it's a nature reserve and people can walk there. It's really badly done, and it's basically, if you want venison, keep going up the track to the farmhouse and knock on the door kind of thing, or phone this number. And they vat pack it down, break it down, vat pack it, steaks and whatever. And there's a chiller in the front porch with all the venison for the public. And I think he said they made over 5,000 last year in venison sales.
Smart.
And that was I think, I'm not sure 100% if that was the first year they've done it, but he's hoping to nearly double that this year.
I can well imagine. There's a fella up here that drives around in a little van, and he goes to different car parks at different times of the week and sells out pretty much within the first couple of hours of being there. People want game.
And I said, where do you advertise this? And he said, nowhere. It's that little sign in the car park.
But I think that whole thing, that if you go on giving up the game, I've got a whole deer in skin, do you want to buy it? 30 quid. People are like, I don't know what to do with it.
Yeah, we've had that problem.
YouTube's always good, but it stops. Do you want some pheasants? Come home with I've got 200 pheasants. Do you want a pheasant? Oh, yeah. And that's where it stops, because they see it's still got feathers on it. Breast it out. Do you want pheasant? Just use it like chicken. Oh, yeah, that'd be great. Thank you. And all of a sudden that goes out the door like nobody's business. But it's that whole concept of, oh, it's got eyes, it's got a head, it's looking at. It's the same as a fish. Do you want some mackerel? Oh, do you want these filleted mackerel? Oh, yeah, I'd love some of those. Because you take away the head, and suddenly it's not what you see. And I think that's where maybe Disney
there's a disconnection, isn't there?
Has had its bad time. So yeah, we were just finishing off about venison there, but I think there's another topic that we need to talk about, which was firearms licensing and law and stuff like that. And I think Kate's got something to say.
Thank you, Peter.
Come on, Kate, let rip.
Thank you, Peter. No, I find it very interesting. I think that as it is at the moment, that they're left to each force are left to interpret the law to how they see it, rather than it's across the board. And I don't know whether it's feasible or whether it's the right thing, that maybe they also should have a training course.
I do think some forces possibly do a little bit of training, but a lot of forces, I think the big question that always comes out of it is they're understaffed, isn't it?
Funding, yeah.
But there seems to be a huge lack of I know you've said up here a lot of them do shoot.
There's a good percentage of firearms officers that will either have been shooters, and the further up to the Highlands you go, that does happen to be the case. But from one week to the next, you might have somebody new in the job, and we've had guys that have literally come from a desk job and suddenly they're firearms officers.
Yeah, which I think is pretty common down south.
Yeah.
And I think this thing about they'll allow somebody a 243 on their first application, but if you ask for a bigger calibre, oh no, you can't have that. But do they not? They don't seem to understand that bullet will do the same thing travelling.
Yeah, I think we touched it off there, but we'll say it again. It's like the 243 seems to be the most common calibre they want to give everybody, and then you say, well, I can have a 308. Oh no, it's a 30 calibre bullet. It's bigger. Yeah, but it'll do the same distance. Actually, potentially the 243 can go further. Will it? It's like, well, yeah. And that the concept of that doesn't seem to click if they have no education of firearms law.
No, so it's I just think it's an unfair system at the moment.
But also, I think the big thing is that the really struggles is every single force interprets the HMOs or whatever it is guidance notes in a different way. So they will, and a lot of people get scared because they'll go online and they'll read a forum or something like that, and they go, oh, I want to get this, but the firearms officer has said this and this. It's like, well, no, because if you and anybody can download the guidance notes and you can flick through them, and most of it, exactly as it says, it's guidance.
Yeah.
But it puts the fear of God in people that they've got to have house alarms and secure rooms and this type of door and that. It's like, well, No, it's guidance, isn't it?
I think it's one of the biggest, a huge topic always on social media. People said, right, I've applied for and whatever it is, and I've been told I can only have this and why, and they've said I need my level 1. It's hard,
but actually that's where sometimes joining a rifle club this takes us all the way back to the beginning. Obviously your club's a non-profit club, but if you've got somebody that wants to get into shooting, joining an actual rifle club can be a great entry point to understanding the actual law behind what you can and can't have. So I was a member up here when I first moved up here of the Aberdeen Full Bore Rifle Club, but our secretary was so on the ball when it came to firearms licensing. If there was something that they turned up and they said you can't have one of those, you message Lara and you say they're saying this, absolute rubbish, tell them this and this, and it literally was changed and you got what you asked for.
I think that's where I was possibly lucky with my first application, was that I actually am the extreme opposite. I don't ever, people come and say, and I say no, don't join a club.
Okay.
Not because they wouldn't learn the law, but because then it's now often used that they will restrict your
yes,
that club.
That can be a problem as well.
Which, if you want to get your 243 or your 6.5 or whatever it is that you want to take with you recreational stalking all around the country, then that's difficult.
Yeah, and I think with firearms law, it always has been, somebody said to me about wanting an open ticket straight away. And I think everybody, it doesn't matter who you are restricted to it's the first 3 years, and after that you can apply to have it open. So that's still within your first term period of having your firearms. But it's just one of those things that the police don't know who you are. They're not going to give you a rifle to go somewhere. You've got to have a piece of land or a club to shoot at. But as you say, if you do put down a club on there, sometimes it can even be more restrictive because they'll go, you can only use this firearm here.
Yeah, and like you were saying, it totally depends on the constabulary, because actually I got my first FAC. I've had a shotgun certificate for a long time, but I applied for FAC coterminous, and they did grant me an open ticket.
Right.
Because in that particular constabulary now, they're saying that if we're going to grant you an FAC, then we're essentially saying that we trust you to know whether ground's suitable or not. They don't have the time for the police commissioner to go and check every piece of ground that people are applying for. That's so good. They've taken a slightly different take on it. You know, if you then do something and you get reported, the police are then well within their rights to revoke that licence.
Yes.
But they're saying, like, if we're going to trust you to go out with a full-bore rifle, especially the deer legal calibers, then you should be able to judge that ground for yourself, whether it's safe or not. You shouldn't have to have somebody tell you.
Now, that's really interesting, because obviously, yeah, if you've got somebody that's a complete novice to shooting, sometimes they don't quite understand the lay of the land and how the caliber works.
Definitely, but I think because along with that, so I obviously have my level 1, so I got an open ticket, but I could prove that I had my level 1, which means that you should have a suitable amount of education. You've got a piece of ground that's signed by somebody else who is
Excuse
also
the noise, the chickens have just laid an egg. So we are sat in the garden actually recording this, and obviously the chicken has just decided to lay an egg. But sorry, carry on.
Yeah, so, you know, there's other things at play. They're not just like, you've never held a rifle and we're saying you can have an open ticket. I'd put things in place that meant that they were happy to do that. And, you know, it is that you have to prove to them why you need a certain caliber rifle. And I think that's right. I think it is annoying that the constabularies can't agree on what that looks like.
Yeah.
If you don't have a level 1 in our area, you often then have to have a mentor, and therefore you can't shoot without them there anyway.
Right.
So, you know, it's not just that they're sort of going around saying like, well, we're just handing out open tickets now. You kind of have to prove that.
But that's where we kind of can go full circle. That takes us back to our education.
And if all constabularies were like that, it would be a lot easier, because there'd be a benchmark, wouldn't there?
Yes, but I think that's a big disconnect talking about firearms. Is every single constabulary has a different interpretation, and therefore they'll have a different way of doing things. And I think we've seen a lot now. There's guys putting down they're applying for their FAC or their renewals, and they're going, but I use it to go stalking.
Yeah.
So we're suddenly getting phone calls from police forces going, is this guy coming out stalking with you? Can you send us an invoice or a receipt?
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, why have I, what, you just want me to produce a receipt for somebody's firearms certificate?
Yeah.
Surely they should have land, or they should have somebody else doing that. So obviously this is a new thing that they're asking for receipts and invoices just to prove that somebody is going to Scotland to shoot a deer.
Well, I think because my first ticket, I didn't have any ground and I wasn't part of a club, but was told, well, you are entitled because you want it for paid stalking.
Yeah, exactly.
And so I had to prove that I was going out paid stalking. And no one had to produce actual physical receipts, I don't
But
think.
now they seem to be on, they want the receipts, or they want the booking.
But that's
Yeah.
how I managed, was to prove that I was going out stalking, and that I'd got what I'd done and what I'd got coming up in the future, and they were happy with that. And then it wasn't until after I'd done my level 1 that I applied for my open ticket, but that was just 2 years down the line.
Okay.
I did get that, but off the back of having done
But
range days, courses,
Yeah.
all sorts of
So
educational stuff again.
they could see straight away that you'd put in the time and effort. So yeah, I think when I did mine, I'd shot since I was 10 at school, but they didn't know that. And you go in and it was 2 years. Can I have an open ticket? What's your experience? Give them all of that. Oh yeah, we see you tick the boxes. I can understand it. You don't want to just give somebody that's first day out, here you go, have an open ticket, and they
Yeah.
go out.
No, it's,
And you see pictures. We go back to that. The wonderful thing of social media. You see people going, "Oh, I'd shoot that." It's like, yeah, what's the background? What's the backstop? What are you shooting
It's
at?
completely out of context, isn't it?
And that's the where it boils down to. So, yeah, I think there has to be some judgment call on it, and we do have the strictest firearms laws in the UK. Considering that we can only have bolt action rifles, whereas you go to Europe and you can be shooting
Yeah.
semi-autos and stuff like that. Anybody that moans that ours are difficult, they are difficult, but they're there for
With
a
good
reason.
reason.
There's a
100%,
good
yeah.
reason for it.
And again, it gives the sport longevity. Like, it would be lovely to have some sort of cohesion across the UK, because it would make life a lot easier.
But we
But
are
I
in
don't disagree with the fact that it should be as heavily licensed as it is.
and as shooters, we are in a minority. I think there's only somewhere in the region of around about 660,000 firearms and firearms and shotgun licenses within the UK.
150,000, and I think it's
3%.
3% is
Are women.
ladies, it's about 4,000. And both of those figures have dropped in the last 2 years.
Yeah, I know a lot of older chaps up here that have handed everything in. They're done.
So many people
They
are doing,
just don't want to deal with all the
The
questions
renewal.
and the renewal and everything that's coming from it. So I've got my renewal coming up. It's been a thing in Scotland. You have to go and do your medical and all the rest of it. And it's pretty straightforward. You walk into my doctor's surgery, hand them the form. They say to me, it's £35, cash or cheque. No problem, pay your cash. But then you hear stories up and down the country where people pay huge different amounts, like London.
Or they won't do it.
Or they won't do it. Yeah. And again, surely the GP surgery, it's only ticking a box.
well, if that's your GP, they should be working for you, shouldn't they?
Yeah. Yeah, so I think the guys in England are all now kicking off about having to do this, but actually, yeah, it's no bother. I've got no worries. There's nothing in my background that says I shouldn't have it. And to be honest, I'd rather that if something did change and suddenly you physically, mentally didn't have the ability to do it, but the doctor says yes, I'd rather them to act on it, because it could be just for your own safety in some ways.
Yeah.
I think that's the other thing that people get annoyed about with the constabularies being different, is that the medical, again, can be interpreted by the police force as they want to interpret it.
Yes.
So some will apply more common sense than others. So if you do have a history of something that isn't relevant now, they can still use that against you to not grant your licence.
Yeah.
Which can be obviously incredibly frustrating if it's no longer valid.
Again, it depends who your chief inspector is and
Exactly.
ticking the
It's
box.
so
Yeah.
unfair, isn't it?
Yeah.
Which is why it needs to be.
They need that, yeah. So that's one of those things we could probably talk about for hours.
For hours.
But realistically, this is where the bigger bodies, our shooting organisations,
Yeah.
they need to actually get on board, and they need to work together as a cohesive group, and then present that to the licensing department. It's all well and good that we've got these wonderful organisations, but they all seem to have their own agendas and go off in their own tangents.
I think within the whole industry, so much more collaboration is needed.
And I think it came up with the BDS. That was one of my podcasts. We were talking about deer stalking going forward. Everybody's got to work together. And I think in terms of just shooting sports going forwards, we need the guys that we pay our money to, our insurers, to work together so that everybody below that can understand that there's no gripes. We're all trying to go in the same direction.
Yes, because I could sit round a table with umpteen different friends in different company and have the same conversations we've just had now. So there's a lot. People do feel quite strongly about it, but again, where do you go with all this? Who do you approach, and how do you push that forwards?
Is it time that the shooters actually came together and we created our own new group?
Ooh.
But is that...
Good luck with that.
I know. Exactly, because...
That's a huge undertaking, isn't it?
That's like laying on the table the calibre choice. Do you want to shoot a 308 or a 6.5 Creedmoor?
Oh.
There's definitely a lot of things that people can't agree on, and that is
and I think that's it. But I think if the working together just starts from us, the guys on the ground.
Absolutely.
And from that point forward, we're the ones that are supposed to drive it. So if we can start pushing them in the right direction, hopefully, things will go
it's
right.
something we've experienced as Artemis that I think because we're aiming towards something that a lot of the larger groups need to be looking at in terms of inclusion in the sport. We've been very fortunate that we have been approached by the larger organisations to help. They're like, what can we do to help? How can we help them? You know, ideas and things like that to get more women involved, because that is a box that needs ticking.
Maybe Artemis is the way to drive this forward, and you are the ones that you will be the
that's
forerunners.
very controversial, Pete. thank you for that. No, I wish
if everyone did a little something. You know, we don't see what we're doing as a big deal, really. We're just a few people that have some spare time, occasionally some spare money that we can put into doing this and to having this mission of getting more women into stalking. Like Kate said, we're not for profit, so everything we do is literally just off of our own back.
It costs us money sometimes.
It costs us money quite a lot of the time.
I think all good deer stalkers, it costs us money sometimes.
Yeah. Well, I think there's an element of that, isn't it? Somebody years ago, not a few years ago, that helped me when I was starting out, and I sort of said, well, what do I owe you? And they said, no, absolutely not, just pass it forward.
Yeah.
And that has been my sort of mantra ever since. If I could help someone or give someone something, or in some way, I'm talking with the deer stalking.
Yeah, 100%.
I will go out of my way to make sure that, and I think that's why we're so passionate about what we do.
Yeah, and all those little things make a difference, and having conversations with people outside of the sport is huge as well. You touched on the sort of political side of things, and we don't need everyone in the UK to hold an FAC, and more people eating game is going to help the cause.
Or just educated to be able to sit in the pub.
And having those conversations with people to stop it being taboo and to bring that connection back to what we do and why is going to be huge for the future of the sport. It's not just
occasionally
the industry,
it's also somebody's gone into a school or a college, don't you, and taken game in, and the kids love to get involved. Yeah. They're not worried about. They don't want the pheasant breasted out. They're quite happy to do the whole stuff, process.
Yeah. So that's one thing that I've done up here with the scouts is literally take pheasants in, and you get the and then you show them how to just pull a few breast feathers out. Yeah, take that out, and then we made pheasant fajitas. Every single
Game
child.
changer.
Yeah.
There was nothing left. Is there any more? It's like, yeah, but it's but that bit, that was out. That was ages ago. But look, we've just made all this lovely food and eaten it. They'll eat venison, and I get parents coming up to me. What have you done? My daughter doesn't like eating mince of any description, and now all she'll eat is venison mince. And I'm like, happy
good
days.
For you.
Yeah.
That's it. So yeah, as you say, education, and I think the whole topic of this podcast really has always come back to that point of just education. So
Education and collaboration.
absolutely. So I think that draws us to a really nice close before we bore you all you listeners to death. And I think we're actually going to go stalking because it's just perked up. We've recorded this outside in my garden in a bit of a tent for a bit of a laugh, but that's why you can hear the chickens, the wind, everything's happening. So yeah, we're going to stop now and actually go out and get some deer stalking done, I think. So thank you very much for listening, and thank you for being guests on the show.
Thank you.
Thank you for having us.
No problem at all. Thank you for listening. I hope you enjoyed that. If you did, please go and subscribe, leave that 5-star notification, click on the like button, do whatever you need to do. Share it with your friends, your family, share it with a non-hunter, pass it out to everybody you know. Let's get the message out there. There'll be more and more podcasts like this coming. So yeah, keep sharing for me. Thanks very much. See you on the next one.